How far can I lean out of the shot?
How cholo are you feeling?
Yeah, right. I gotta recline. So did you just fire the person whose office this was?
Yeah.
Well, I just moved him into the cube
Sorry,
world.
buddy.
Yeah, sorry.
You were important to have enough to have your own office. You just weren't the top of the important if you're at the bottom. So
Yeah.
you're back in Cubicle Nation.
You know what's fascinating? If we start, we're live, but we'll just roll with it. I used to work in IBM years and years ago.
Uh-huh.
Their office, you could tell someone's seniority by how many roof tiles they had, because the more senior you got upgraded to the bigger format. So you count the roof tiles. Oh, that person's isn't that nuts? That's the old way.
It's like, how many do you have? 6? What? That's like a closet. It was a closet. Now it's my office.
Are we recording yet?
Yep.
Mason,
Go.
on here.
You gotta hit the red button.
Yep. Hit the red record button.
Boom.
Thank you.
It's like Jordan does it.
Sure. Yeah. I've seen one of those before somewhere.
Yeah, somewhere. Yeah, the pressure of us being on our podcast, having some of the glitterati of
That's right.
industry in our midst, terrifying.
I do like the wooden table though. That's earned you some points.
Yeah, good. Thank you.
Yeah, you're
Appreciate it. All right, let's get into it. He's the host of the Jordan Harbinger show, hosting a podcast that gets over 5 million downloads a month and was named Apple's Best of 2018. We're definitely not worthy. Welcome to the show, Jordan Harbinger.
Hey, that's a good short intro. Thanks for having me. I like the short ones. You know, it's awkward when someone's like, here's your whole bio, and you're just sitting there, like, tapping your fingers on the table, looking around.
I might add some more when I do. I might
That's
record another intro and give you some more shout outs. But
Sure.
I don't want to reveal all your secrets. It's the truth of it, because there's so many fascinating elements to your pathway to where you are now, and that's the stuff I want to dig into. So I didn't want to really give any spoilers.
Sure, no
That's
spoilers.
the truth of it. I think I realized how popular you were and how successful your podcast is based on the reaction in the office. So when I told the guys here and around the office, like, hey, Jordan Harbinger's coming in tomorrow, there was just disbelief. Like, no, he's not.
Really?
No, he's really coming in. No. Yeah, no, he's coming in to see me tomorrow. So that's the level of respect my team has for my show.
That's good. Yeah, I also, for your show. I'm more surprised they weren't like, yeah, who's that? I don't know.
No, they're like, there's no way you can draw that kind of talent. That was the vibe, right, Omar?
Yeah, when he told me yesterday, I was like
No.
Jordan Harbinger?
Yeah.
This is the level I'm at now, Omar. I'm drawing the big guns.
That's right. Congrats. Can I say no? That doesn't work. I can't say that.
But we're obviously under tremendous pressure today, because to have someone, our little show, have someone who's such an expert. You've been doing this for so long.
Yeah.
Podcasting since 2006, I believe.
Yeah.
I mean, what was podcasting back then?
So there were 800 shows, I think, something like that. I remember reading an article, like 800 shows, and I talked to my friend, and he's like, yeah, well, no one's going to just find it with 800 other shows, but we can tell people how to get it. I'm like, that's good enough. Because we were burning our stuff to CDs and being like, look, we'll just hand these out to people that are interested in what we're talking about. And we knew we were onto something, because I'd give a CD to a buddy and I'd be like, hey, check this out, listen to it if you're curious about. I was teaching body language, networking, and nonverbal communication. And they'd be like, great. Hey, so I gave that CD to my brother and he won't give it back. Or I gave that CD to my roommate and he liked it and then he's bringing it around. Can I get another one? So I thought, all right, I'm spending a lot of money on these CDs. I'll charge like $5 just to make up the cost of burning the CD. And then it was like, oh yeah, if you're charging for them, then I want 8. And I'm like, dude, what are you talking about? 8? Yeah, I want to give it to my brother. I want to give another one to my mom and another one to my sister. And then I thought, okay. So I started doing that. It's not a big money maker at $5 each, and you're waiting like 45 minutes for a CD burn in 2005.
That's like a third of minimum wage.
Yeah, yeah. It wasn't a good profit margin, but I thought this is pretty interesting. And then a friend of mine was like, "Why do you burn it to CD?" And I said, and this is true at this time. There's no way to transfer an MP3 file online from a central location. There was Napster, but you can't say go to this file indicator and you can get this file on like a P2P. There's just no way to do it. Yeah. And I even called GoDaddy or whatever and I said, look, what I want to do is I want to put an MP3 audio file up on the server. And they're like, we can do that and it's this much per gigabyte. And I was like, okay, well, if a couple hundred people get it, it'll only be like $25 a month. Well, we put it up there and it was like, we blew through that in like 48 hours.
Wow.
And I thought, ooh, we don't want to give this URL out anymore because we're going to go broke.
Too many listeners.
Yeah. And this was just us telling people around Ann Arbor, Michigan that we had this like MP3 available about body language, which was like a 20-minute long thing.
What was the competition back then? Was it just NPR or?
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know if NPR was on there. It was like This Week in Tech was on there. That was a big show, or kind of like the only show. There were a bunch of kind of early adopter tech guys being like, here's a podcast about bird watching that had like 5 people downloading it.
Yeah.
And there were a million that were like, test, or I'm going to do a podcast. And then like one episode goes in and it's never updated. You know, they haven't been updated in months. And then there were other people that were really early that are still going, but it's very few. This Week in Tech, there was one called Sex with Emily that's run by my friend Emily Morse. She was there early. She and This Week in Tech are the only people I know that I can think of right now that were there at that time that are still doing it.
Wow. And what was it that got you going into audio? Was it that you saw that as a future opportunity, or that was just the format you enjoyed most?
You know what? It was a little bit of both, because people were going, hey, Vidler, because YouTube didn't exist. Gary Vee, who I already knew at that point, just informally, he was on Vidler. And I was like, this is a really good format, but here's the problem. There, by the way, no smartphones, no iPhones, nothing.
Right.
So it was like, look, if you want to do a video, you have to record probably to tape, unless you had a crazy awesome camera that had some sort of hard drive in it, which I think high-end ones did. So then you got to do that editing video, all but impossible on a computer in 2004, 2005, whatever. So we just decided video is not going to work. This is extreme amounts of work. Gary probably had a decent setup, but he probably also was like editing the video himself. I was studying for the bar exam. I was in law school, so I wasn't about to be like, oh, let me quickly upload some video to Vidler and share it, which was not going to happen. So we were like, all right, well, we're already having these audio conversations. Let's just record them and put those up on, burn them to CD. And then eventually when we found out about podcasting, it was like, all right, I'll throw this podcast up there. And when people ask us, we'll be like, go to this domain that then shows you how to download this podcast.
Yeah. And then that was really the platform that got you going.
That was the beginning. And most people didn't listen because we tell them how to edit, and they're like, so I have to play an MP3. How do I do that? Oh, your computer can do it if you have an amp. Okay, so how do I do this? I got this website and almost MP3. I mean, it's just complex.
Yeah.
Or it's like install iTunes, and then that'll play it. But you have to sit in front of your computer and listen. It was ridiculously inconvenient.
Yeah. So you were sort of succeeding in spite of the technology.
Oh my God.
Not because of it.
Yeah.
And now the barriers to entry are really down, and you got people like us doing it. And
now anybody can do it.
Yeah, but you've survived, obviously, and thrived. And I think similar in our industry, it's hard to stay relevant in this business over a long period of time, because there's a lot of people doing it and things shift, and the younger set keeps coming through. And what do you think's been the key to your ability to stay relevant over a decade?
So this won't surprise anybody, but it's constant evolution. So, and what I mean by that is when I started, it was like, all right, let's talk about networking skills. And people were like, okay. And then it was like, let's talk about dating. And people were like, oh, more interesting. Then it was, hey, if you talk about dating, that's one thing. But if you talk about how like miserable your dating life is, people relate to it more. And I was like, oh, good. It's a more personal narrative. And that's like, this is cool. We want some instruction too. So it was like personal narrative and problem, how I solved the problem. And then that got popular. And then years went by and I started to be like, I don't really want to talk about dating nonstop. Let me do an interview with somebody else who's like got an interesting story. I think one of my friends, he had been like a drug smuggler, and I was like, let me blur his voice. Blur, it's not the right term, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Obscure his voice, and I'll get his story. And he was really candid because he was censored, like his voice was obscured. And so I was like, this is really cool. And people wrote in, and I thought they were going to be like, get back to what you know, which is this like dating and nonverbal communication. I was like, really surprised by people going, that was awesome.
Yeah.
And I went, oh, well, I know a lot of people with interesting stories. And so I started doing various interviews with entrepreneurs, with people that had gotten kidnapped by Pakistani freaking terrorists, whatever it was, and getting their story. And I was like, oh, I actually like the conversation far more than I like being like, so stand up straight when you walk in the door or whatever. You know, like it just, that whole idea interested me. And then as years went by, I realized, oh, in order to have more fun doing this, I need to get better at it. It wasn't actually I'm getting better at this naturally. That happened, I'm sure, but I also decided to get consciously good at it because I was like, oh, I need to learn how to interview. Who do I listen to? So I started listening to other interviewers, and I was like, this isn't that good. They're missing opportunities to get good stories. They're missing the idea and the question. They're missing the point. They're not delivering any value to the listener. They're, all these different mistakes. And I was like, oh, I'm just going to not do that anymore. I'll make sure I do this other thing. So I started to get better at it.
Yeah.
And then as I started getting feedback from listeners and started to take coaching for like my voice and for storytelling and for broadcasting, and I would edit my own shows because that's what you do when you start a business or a hobby at that point, because I was still an attorney. I was editing my own show and I'd go, man, I say a whole lot. Let me cut those out. Well, spend 100 hours editing out the word and see if you forget what you said.
That'll stop you pretty quick.
Yeah. So I started to realize, like, all right, I'm cutting out my audio tics. I'm learning how to create story narrative. I'm learning how to interview people. I'm learning how to not be shy. I'm learning how to be more opinionated on the microphone, whatever it is, and that skill set built. But when I look at other people who've been podcasting for a while that haven't grown, because there are some sort of been doing it 7 years and it's not growing. I look at it and I go, your first episode is kind of just marginally less interesting or polished as your current episode.
Yeah.
Like, what the hell is wrong with this? I mean, imagine making this same thing in the exact same way. Even companies that have a product that has been around for 200 years and we use the same recipe. They use machines to make it now, though, right? They're not like hand sewing it. It's not. If this is a food product and it's like, we still use the original recipe. Yeah, but you do it with robots.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a way to do it that makes sense. So that evolution makes sense for every industry and for everybody. And especially in a creative industry like this, you have to evolve. I think, I don't know, this is more your domain than mine, but Coco Chanel, actually, people don't know this. Her latest designs, not the latest, but there was a whole phase where she just sucked at it.
Yeah.
She didn't evolve, and it was for old ladies and nobody cared and nobody liked it. Now we remember her like, oh my gosh, pioneer, innovator. There was a whole decade or two where people were like, ugh, that's for old ladies and nobody cares.
Yeah.
We kind of whitewashed that because we want to be like, oh, she was the best ever.
Yeah.
But that's not really what people thought at the time. They hated her perfumes. They hated her clothing. Her fashion line got no fanfare after a while. And then she changed again, and it was like, okay, we get it. She evolved.
I think this evolution and evolving your messaging to keep improving yourself, absolutely fantastic advice, something that we have to do all the time. You're absolutely right. Our shoe is 50 years old, but we always are tweaking weight, materials, production, little tiny millimeter tweaks make a difference in aesthetics in things like footwear and sneakers. And you obviously have learned and continue to learn. And right now, the market for podcasts is really big, obviously, and there's a lot of interview format. Do you see your show evolving again, or where are you now in your kind of storyline?
I do see myself evolving again. I want to put a pin in that because I got to buy myself some time to think about how that's going to be answered. But I'm curious, do you somewhere around here have like one of the original K-Swiss shoes from 50 years ago?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
It's like a building brick.
It's like a wooden sole.
Yeah, it's chiseled from concrete. And
I'm curious, is it around here somewhere?
Yeah, I'll show you.
Oh, I definitely want to see it.
Yeah,
because I'm sure that it like wasn't really waterproof and probably got worn down a lot faster than modern rubber or something, or like you wear it and it's not cushiony at all.
Yeah, absolutely. From the outside, but all the underpinnings are obviously better and more comfortable and lighter and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
And that comes from better production, better learning more, listening to your audience, the whole 9 yards, all similar things in business that you've got to be doing.
So to answer your question, I will evolve again. I feel like it's a constant process, and I know that sounds really cliche, but I think when people think, oh yeah, we're constantly evolving, they think it happens to you, and in a way it does. Like, yes, if you do 100 episodes of CEOs Wear Sneakers, you're going to get better at this. If you do 100 episodes and you're going, when I listen to other podcasts, they do this interesting rhetorical device where then they cut it and it's a cliffhanger. Oh, and they do their ad reads this other way. I'm going to copy that format and then make it my own. Or like, oh, when Omar's here and he does these IG clips, those do well and people share them. Well, let's double down on that, but try it on Snapchat, whatever.
Yeah.
you're going to get better a hell of a lot faster than somebody who's like, I'm just going to practice and see what happens. And this is a concept called deliberate practice. Have you heard of this?
No.
So I want to say his name's Anders Ericsson. He's kind of the originator of this, or one of them. And Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, which is, don't even try to spell it. They came up with this idea of deliberate practice. And what this means is like, look, if we take 100 tennis swings or swings at a tennis ball, we're going to get better at hitting the ball, holding the racket, getting the ball to go where we hit it. If we take 100 swings and after each one, a coach is like, actually hold the grip a little higher. You know what? Your back foot was off the ground. You're going to get more power. If you imagine getting critiqued on each one and then you change what you do deliberately, not just 100 random ass whacks at the ball, that's deliberate practice. And most people don't do that. Because it's easier to not do that. They go, look, man, I'm just going to study Chinese by like standing around in China and trying to read menus and talk to people and say hello and goodbye. There are expats in China that have lived there for 10, 20 years. Their Chinese sucks. Yeah. There are people that study on Skype from home 2 hours a week with a teacher, and they're reading books. And I know that because I'm doing that. I'm studying on Skype at home, reading books for like 8-year-olds or 12-year-olds, but I'm still reading in freaking Mandarin. Yeah. But when I went to Serbia, I lived there for 14 months. My Serbian's not that good because I was like, oh, hi, I'll order this. Maybe I'll like look at a few things or talk to a few friends. But I didn't like really try to get taught the language as much as I did with Chinese. So my Chinese is better than my Serbian. That's what deliberate practice does. And that's what you should do in your business. That's what you should do in any skill that you have. You need to have deliberate practice. No successful business, and I know it's a blanket statement, so it's dangerous. Very few successful businesses have somebody at the top who's just going, yeah, we're just going to throw stuff at the wall, see what sticks. You know, I got a marketing budget. It's $100,000 for this particular product. I'm just going to spend $10,000 on every random idea that I have until I run out of money. I mean, that is not a good strategy. Yeah. And people don't generally succeed that way unless they actually get really lucky. Yeah. Most of us do not want to bet the future of our company and our employees on us getting lucky and hitting one of those whack-a-mole ideas that happens to take off.
What are you studying now, or where's your practice really aimed at in terms of your skill set right now?
Yeah, so right now my wife always says my guilty pleasure is hiring coaches because it's so true. I have a vocal coach that helps me get like stamina for my voice, project better for speaking, things like that. Because if I'm talking 6 hours a day, I can't be like, yeah, I can't do this other big show that I have an opportunity for because my throat hurts. I have to just be really careful and I have to train the voice. Other things I do, I'll be like, I have a broadcasting coach who's like, look, this ad read was good, but you need to start with energy, not, come in and warm up doing your ad read. Like you need to have energy in the beginning. I have a voiceover coach, which is very similar, but it's more like voice acting. That's more fun because I do video games and stuff, voices for
Grand Theft Auto.
Grand Theft Auto is one of the games that I did, yeah. And
you ever heard him in the games?
I haven't, but I wanted to ask.
Or you don't know. Unless you didn't play it, then you probably didn't. Yeah. But, so voiceover, broadcasting, vocals, I've had tons of different coaches for different things. I have a Chinese teacher that has nothing to do with my business, really, but it could in the future.
But listen, that is such a huge difference, and obviously one of the keys to your success is everybody wants to be at the top, and everybody wants the best, but not everybody's prepared to really do what it takes to get there. And this to me is like, wow, this is an example of someone who is at the top of your game, is one of the most celebrated podcasters, is getting millions of downloads a month, and you're still getting coached and, improving your craft. Yeah. And many people who've got, 100 listeners a month and are just not putting any extra effort in, and they're like, why am I not getting the same kind of pickup?
It's true. I get that, though. I understand that because it has to do with, I think for me especially also, so if you've got 100 listeners a month and you're trying to grow your whatever and it's not working, but you're also not really putting in enough energy, I get it. I forgive you. Forgive yourself, right? Stop beating yourself up. Because when I first started, I was like, why would I think about getting the right type of microphone? Why would I think about like turning the furnace off that's next to my studio when you can hear it? Why would I edit everything out? Maybe I'll just cut the beginning and the end off. Everything in the middle, it's like, fine, I don't need to worry about that. So what? I took a break and went to the bathroom. I didn't think about it because there weren't that many people consuming the product. I just thought it wasn't a big deal and it was cool and raw. But after you know what it was? It wasn't even some sort of big epiphany that I had. It was after 6 years and change of doing the show and just kind of gradually getting better. I interviewed one of my favorite authors, Robert Greene. Do you know him? Mastery, 48
Yes.
Laws of Power, Laws of Human Nature. So I interviewed him, and he was like, hey, this took forever to schedule because it took like years for me to do it. And he goes, you and I can't be that busy. Why did this take so long? And I go, truthfully, I wasn't sure I would do a good job. And he's like, actually, I meant to tell you, this is one of the better interviews that I've done. I've done a lot of media. And I went, well, you know, I read the book beforehand. It's a huge book.
Yeah.
I think it was a Mastery or whatever that I did, that first interview 7 years and years ago. And he goes, oh, well, you know, that made all the difference. And I thought, wait a minute, what if I read the book for every show? Like, which is now table stakes to do a good interview. Like, oh, prepare for the show? Who the hell would have thought of that? And he also said, you know, you're as good as any of the other professional journalists or better. And I thought, there's no way these professional journalists, they know what they're doing and I don't. I'm just a podcaster. That's when I was like, wait, maybe I'll take this seriously. So I went to Guitar Center and shout out Guitar Center, right? Mm-hmm. And I went and bought all new microphones, all new preamps, because before I was just using like whatever BS, like USB garbage. And I went and got new stuff. And I was like, wow, I don't know how to use any of this. So hours and hours every weekend, months go by, and I'm like basically an audio engineer at like a very low level.
Yeah.
And I know how to tweak everything and make my voice sound good and edit all these different things and power all this gear. And so then I thought, well, okay, I can hide behind the tech for a while, but I could have an $80,000 microphone. It's not going to make the show better.
Right.
So what's the real weak link? And my wife would go, why don't you read the book? And I'd be like, I don't need to read the book. And then she would be like, hey, you know, every time you read the book, the show is a lot better. So I was like, oh, I can't really get around it. And I tried to hire someone to summarize the book, and I tried to read the cliff notes for the book. Nothing was as good as me actually doing the work. And I thought, this is a big difference here. Amateurs, they'll prepare because they don't really know what they're doing and they're clueless. But then there's this middle band of amateurs that's like, I'm good, I don't need to do that because I know just enough where I think I know everything, or I don't see the marginal return on this other immense amount of effort. And then for me, as my evolution to like a real professional broadcaster, interviewer, podcaster was going, this extra amount of work is so much effort, but it's going to make the show 10, 20% better. Yeah. So now I have to do that. And now I'm constantly looking for that like 1% kind of edge.
You're looking for 1% now?
Always, yeah.
In everything you do?
I would say pretty much everything. There are certain things where I'm not, where I'm trying to be mindless. Yeah. Like if it's Friday night and I've had a long week and I turn on my Xbox, I'm not like, gotta be a really good gamer. No thanks. You know, I turn that ish on easy mode and I let my guy get shot 85 times and I'm still running around like that. That's fine.
Listen, I mean, this is why, you know, Steph Curry is getting to the arena an hour before the game and putting up shots, or stays after the game's finished and shoots 200 free throws. I mean, this is the same as you going and getting vocal coaching for vocal stamina when you're already on top. I mean, this is what's making you on top. And it's really interesting because one of the things we do at K-Swiss is we've drawn this parallel between entrepreneurs and athletes and said, hey, most young people now are really trying to be successful and have their own businesses or brands. And, you know, I was thinking, is the dedication the same as of an athlete's endeavors in entrepreneurship? In other words, there was a time when athletes didn't focus on nutrition. You know, I remember as a kid, soccer players would like smoke cigarettes at halftime. And, you know, like NBA players would go out drinking beers after the game. Now it's all nutrition and everything like that. And I'm wondering, well, if you're an entrepreneur now and you want to be at the top of your game, at some point, aren't we going to be getting into this idea of, are you eating the right nutrients for brain power? And,
definitely.
You know, all this kind of thing. And that is going to be what puts you in that top 0.1% of people. And I think that's what we're seeing those parallels. So it's really interesting to hear you talk about how you are doing that stuff. And that is obviously one of the big keys to why you've made it where you are and maintain that position and growing.
Yeah, there are always things that you can improve, and you have to look at sort of the 80-20 on it. But I often will go, damn, 80-20, yeah, but this is going to make the show that much better, even though it's really ridiculously inefficient or not cost effective. So for example, here's a perfect example. Late in 2017 or something like that, I thought, a lot of people do interviews in person and they film them on YouTube. I don't worry about YouTube as much because I do film my interviews, and I'll get into that in a second, but I don't want to optimize for YouTube because a podcast comment is like a long, thoughtful email, and a YouTube comment is like, your shoes are lame-o. What a tool. It's like ISIS writes the comments or something on YouTube.
Omar knows all about that.
Yeah.
I see him.
And like, you have to figure out what's going to work for you. But I was like, well, okay, when I do interviews in person, they're a lot better. But that means that I would have to fly out and meet every guest face to face or have them come to me. Well, that's never going to happen. And then my wife goes, yeah, that's kind of like what you said when I told you to read the book and you're like, I don't have time. And I went, you're right. So then it was, all right, I got to do all my interviews in person now. And so now I'll go there in person. I go, well, okay, if I'm going in person, then I want to film it for YouTube. And what I noticed was, and this is sort of an experiment that now I do everything this way, is when people are remote, you'll hear like their email go off. Like, do you need a minute? And they're like, sorry, my wife is texting me. We're late for lunch. And I'm thinking, who doesn't do this? Someone who's standing in front of you with a video camera in their face. They don't check their phone because their wife is late the phone is off. So I thought, okay, it's not just a video for YouTube. It's the cameras, the lighting. There's something where people go, oh, shoot, I better
forcing
sit up straight and dial it in. And so you bring your A game. So I went, oh, okay. So now when someone's like, hey, look, I'll only do this remotely. I'm like, no, we won't do it. And they're like, well, I can't travel. I'm like, cool, I'm going to come to your house. And I've done that. So I'll show up at someone's house with permission, obviously. And then I'm in their house, setting up lights. Yeah, knocking on the window. And then they'll go, wow, I've never done an interview like this. And as much as I want to be like, pat myself on the back because I did such a good job, half of it was me showing up with a camera crew and being like, oh, you thought you were going to like play Candy Crush during this? No, you're on.
Now, was this money out of pocket in the early days, or is it now? Because that's a big, like buying equipment, traveling, all makes the show so much better, but is an investment. That's obviously some decision you made at some point. Hey, I'm all in on this.
Yeah, I had to do that. And here's the thing, like filming them is not profitable. And putting the video up and having it edited and putting it on YouTube is probably not profitable. It's hard to measure because I'm sure people find us on YouTube, come subscribe to the show, whatever. That happens all the time. Now, is it thousands of dollars a month for the travel, the filming, the editing, all that? Probably not, but over time it will be.
Yeah.
But really what it is quality enforcement.
Yeah.
It's like, there are ways, and I did this for years, where you can just do a show remotely and it's on Skype and it doesn't matter and it sounds great and your microphone was $80 and that's literally, other than your computer and internet connection, all you really needed to do the show.
Yeah.
That's table stakes, and that you can do a show like that. It will never be as good as the show where I'm showing up and doing it face to face in their kitchen or whatever with lighting in their face.
There's another clue to your success. And I actually thought that when I listened to your episode with Cesar Milan, the dog whisperer, and you were like, hey, I'm here at the dog ranch. And I was thinking, oh man, he really went out there. And because I thought that's probably not in downtown LA, it's probably in the middle of nowhere, right?
Yeah.
It's Cesar Milan's dog ranch. I'm like, you must have gone in the middle of nowhere to do that.
Yeah.
So I did sort of mentally log that. I also loved how you walked in and pedaled the dogs and ruffled their ears and then looked at the sign that said, don't touch the dogs.
Yeah, it's like, don't touch the dogs, don't talk to the dogs. And I was like, oh, how's the big boy doing? Yeah. So what was funny is he saw me do all that, and then during the interview I was like,
sorry about
don't
that.
touch the dogs. And he's like, no. Yeah, sorry. I mean, but we all do that with dogs, I thought. I was like, who doesn't lean down and reach down and pet a dog and runs up to them?
I thought that's what they were for.
Exactly. And he's got a whole bunch of dogs from his 911 show where they're really damaged.
Right.
And they were like, don't even look at those dogs. And I thought, okay, they're probably, and I go, hey, so what's up with the dogs we're not even supposed to look at? And she goes, they're damaged rescues. And what they do is they'll be super cute and they'll bark and they want you to come up and they're whining and they're all friendly. And the second you reach out to pet them, they'll either be like really nice and then bite you, or they'll just immediately attack you. And I thought, okay, well, that's confusing. And they're like, yeah, well, we also get duped. We work here, we work with these dogs, and we'll also be like, oh, she's finally coming around, and got bitten by this
They're
tan.
just waiting for you. They see you
Yeah.
getting fresh meat. Here
Yeah.
it comes.
It's like, oh, he looks nice. Let's get him. We'll double team this guy, crush him. Yeah.
So I want to, I mean, obviously you've had great success with your podcast. There's tons we can learn about it. Certainly from my standpoint, we're learning, and everything you said about kind of studying how you are and how you do it, I've done myself and I'm trying to improve. So it's really good advice. Now, it takes a lot of curiosity, I think, I always think, what is it that makes you a great interviewer? And I think number one, it must be curiosity about people. And you've lent into personal development is sort of your forte.
Yeah,
right?
definitely.
So, but when you look at your background, it's you were a lawyer and you were traveling, and it's like all hell's broken loose, and all sorts of different things, and you've ended up as a podcaster. So help us sort of shuffle out through your background. What was your path? When you started out, what was the initial plan? Was to be a lawyer?
Yeah, the initial plan was, even before that, I had no clue what I wanted to do. And then I was studying different things in college, and I was like, I'm running out of time.
Yeah.
I got to do something. And then I was like, oh, grad school buys you more time, but then you don't want to go, or I didn't want to go to like art school or be like an English master's degree in English. None of that made sense. So my parents were like, look, you should do something functional. What is that? Engineering? Not going to happen. Didn't know prereqs for that. That would have been a good field of study for me, 2020 hindsight, but it didn't work. And then people were like, you should be a lawyer. And you should never listen to anybody who's not a lawyer who tells you should be a lawyer, because they have no idea what lawyers do. They're like, oh, you're opinionated, or you like to argue, or, oh, you're good at writing. It's like, you should be a lawyer. And it's like, look, that is not what lawyers do most of the time. So
they sit there going over minutia for days, and you're not like a trial lawyer on day one.
Right.
That would be fun.
It would be fun. But yeah, unless you're like a public defender.
Like my cousin Vinny.
Yeah. My cousin Vinny. Yeah, good
day one, you're like, hey.
Yeah. You're not throwing into that. Yeah, you never get to do stuff like that. And so anyway, I went to law school because it's like, all right, cool. It's a good way to get a job. And then I got to law school and I thought, well, while I'm here, I might as well make the best of this. So I studied really hard and I got this awesome Wall Street job in finance. And that was the money.
Yeah,
the only thing that paid more than that was investment banking. And the hours were like, people were just like, look, you're not going to have a life. 100 plus hour work weeks, 7 days a week. It's going to be like that for the first several years. And then if you don't end up getting like fired or pigeonholed into like some position, you're going to get made like a managing director or something. Then you start getting these huge ass bonuses, but you will probably never really have a life. You're never really going to have a life. And I thought, no, thanks.
Yeah.
I'll just be a regular lawyer that only has a life on Sunday.
You know how many people would say, how much money was it again?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, investment banking is just you can get minted so nicely.
Absolutely miserable.
You'll be miserable. So,
I have a question on that.
Sure.
Though. I think something that I love about your journey while you're in college and you're getting this job, you also started doing these CDs, right?
Yeah, in law school. Yeah.
What was it about it? Did you just want to give the knowledge of the communication that you were having? And when did you start recording these?
Yeah,
that was like the starting point of everything.
It was. So after my first year of law school, I think it was like in my second year of law school, I had done an internship with a law firm also on Wall Street and in London. And I was like, oh, I need to figure this out. I'm not smart enough to be here. I have imposter syndrome big time. I didn't call it that. I just thought, no, I'm really the weakest link. I'm going to get slammed. They're going to figure out I don't belong here. And then one of the partners that had hired me, he was never in the office. And I was like, oh, I bet he works from home. So if he works from home, they're not going to find out that like what he's doing most of the time. So he has sort of like he can sort of do his own thing. And I thought, if I work from home, it'll take them longer to figure out that I don't belong here. And then by that time, maybe I'll have figured out how to be valuable to the company. And they'll be like, well, we would have fired you a long time ago if we knew what you were up to, but we didn't. Now you're okay, though, so you can keep your job. So I was like, I'm going to figure out how to work from home. So I asked this guy, Dave, who had hired me, hey, do you work from home all the time? And he was like, not really. Why? And I was like, well, you're never in the office. And he's like, well, I guess I work from home sometimes. And I go, so where are you?
Where are you the rest of the time?
And he was just like, oh, well, I manage projects and I manage them from home most of the time. But I also, I go on like charity events and I go play racquetball and I do cycling and I do jujitsu. And I was like, so do you not have to work that much? Like, I'm really confused. He goes, no. Well, I generate a lot of business for the firm. And I thought, how does jujitsu and going on charity cruises and playing racquetball or squash, how does that generate business for the, like, what are you talking about? That makes no sense. And I didn't understand that like networking was something that you do when you generate business, because I was 27 and nobody teaches you this stuff.
Right.
Now more people are like, oh yeah, relationships are important. They don't really get that generating business for your firm is how lawyers get made partner. You can work a bunch, and many people do, but the most important partners that can write their own ticket and like do whatever project they want and work anywhere they want, those guys and gals, they generate business for their company. And so I was like, I can't really make myself smarter, and I can't really work more because we're already working like 6-7 days a week. Making yourself smarter is a really slow process. What I can do is figure out how to develop relationships, generate business for the firm. If I do that, it's like a secret third path. It's like a competitive advantage that other people aren't aware of. So if I work on this skill now, then what'll happen in 5 years when they're like, hey, have you gotten a deal for the firm? I'll be like, I know how to do that. And everyone else will be like, oh crap, I got to figure out this networking thing. I'll have this huge time advantage and a head start on everyone else. So I decided
So it was
I'm
super,
gonna work on that.
super calculated.
It was pretty calculated. Yeah. I was thinking this is going to be my competitive advantage. And so I started studying networking, relationship development, how to make friends and influence people, you know, that kind of stuff. I took Dale Carnegie classes and all that. But what I noticed in those classes was people were, you know, you're learning like how to memorize someone's name or whatever, and how to remember what someone's kids like tennis, like all this stuff. And I thought, this is cool. Look them in the eye, have a firm handshake. Like, I get it. But if someone's not giving my firm a multi-million-dollar law deal, is it because I don't have a firm handshake and I didn't look him in the eye? Is that why? Or is it because they don't like me and this guy in a sweater vest at the YMCA just kind of like doesn't know or can't teach that because it's too nuanced? And I thought there's more to the story. So I started reading all of these books on it, and in like body language and nonverbal communication and real science behind first impressions and things like that, because it's everything else seemed really simplistic. And I thought, I know plenty of nice people that have not done a damn thing that's interesting and are not successful. So it's not just being nice. It's not just being thoughtful. There's more to this. There's a systemized way to do this. And everybody I knew that had a lot of connections and was well networked was like old money and just kind of knew everyone, and their parents knew everyone. And then there were a couple of guys at law school that were just like really well known, but they'd grown up poor and they were really outgoing and friendly. And I remember hearing like, oh yeah, they're being groomed for local political office. And I was like, how does that happen? That's cool, but how does that happen? So I remember kind of like emulating some of their qualities and thinking like, all right, this guy says hello to everyone. He remembers everybody's name. He's nice to everybody. He supports people's causes. He helps people out with stuff. He's involved with a bunch of different organizations. Like, I'm going to give that kind of thing a shot and see what happens. And so I started working on those different skills. And a lot of what it came down to was nonverbal and verbal communication. No surprise there. It's one discrete skill set. And I would talk about those things and teach those things in little workshops to other lawyers or future lawyers. And then I remember talking about it at a bar, and like a group of women had overheard me. And they're like, oh, can we join your conversation? I thought, sure. So then I'd go out another night and talk about it at the bar with those same women or different women or their friends. And they're like, oh, can I bring some of my friends to talk about this? So I suddenly found myself like teaching groups of men and women all these different nonverbal communication skills. And then I was like, I'm onto something here. There's an interesting topic or subtopic here. I've got everyone in the whole bar like wants to hear about this. I started burning those CDs and handing them to those people to essentially catch them up on the conversation, because I found myself having the same conversation like 6 nights a week. And I thought, if I have them listen to the basics, I don't have to field the same questions. Just like a professor's like, look, do the reading and then come in and do the discussion. Don't just come in and ask me stuff that's in the reading. So I started to do that, and then I realized this is something deeper that I should really work on, because 1, everyone's interested in it. 2, it's really powerful. And 3, nobody seems to freaking know anything about this stuff.
Right.
So that's how we started doing the burning of the CDs, and then the podcast that evolved out of that.
Did it generate business for the firm? Did those skills that you learned also translate to that?
No, everybody got laid off like 6 months later. It was 9 months later where not even 9 months later, it was like a few months in, I worked in mortgage-backed securities, so all that stuff stopped and I had no work. So then I really started working hard on all of the other stuff, the podcast, everything. And the mortgage-backed securities really tanked the economy. And I'm trying to think of the timeline after that. They were like, hey, look, we're basically going to like lay off all of the first year class, all 53 of you. And I remember everyone's like, my life is over. And I was like, I don't care.
I've got another life.
I've got another thing going on. Yeah.
So is that when you sort of just merged into this new sort of line you built for yourself?
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah. I mean, I'd been doing the show in my friend's basement for a while. That it had got, I mean, it wasn't popular in an absolute sense. It was a popular podcast, but it wasn't like nobody even knew what podcasts were. It's like 1% of the population. Right. Every time people said, what do you do? I always just said radio because I had my satellite radio show because we had gone on satellite radio as a guest spot. And then they were like, this is really interesting. You guys should do your own show. And I said, hey, I have a podcast. Do you know what those are? And they're like, yeah, I kind of do. It's this emerging thing. So they listened to the show. The station manager did. And he's like, you should just do this at Sirius XM satellite radio. So I did.
Fantastic.
For a bunch of years.
So it's really a blend now of the personal development discussions and the interviews.
Yeah.
You actually just talk about networking. If people are interested, you do have a course that I actually just registered for. I haven't started it yet, but you have a course called 6 Minute Networking.
Yeah, 6 Minute Networking, yeah.
So if you want to learn about some of presumably it's the stuff you learned back then.
Sure, yeah.
It's now packaged, it's free.
It's packaged nicely. It's packaged better than it was back then. Yeah, 6 Minute Networking. It's at jordanharbinger.com/course. And so, and it's free. It's what it is like all these little daily habits that I have that have allowed me to both expand, maintain my network. Things like going into your text messages, scrolling all the way to the bottom. That's so easy. I call it Connect 4 because I try to do it with 4 people a day, plus everyone knows what Connect 4 is. So you go all the way down to the bottom of your text messaging app. That's where all those dead conversations are from 2 years ago. Like, hey, let's get lunch sometime. Cool, bro. Never kept up with that person. You can go back in there, send them a message, and the script that I use is in the 6 Minute Networking course. And what this does is it lets you reactivate these weaker or dormant ties in your network. And you'd be shocked at what shakes out of there. That's when you get people going, oh, hey, Jordan, nice to talk to you. Man, it's been so long since we met up in San Diego 4 years ago at this random conference and had lunch with 8 other people. You know, we never did touch base. By the way, my friend's running this other podcast for K-Swiss. Maybe I should introduce you guys. Yeah, sure. Why not? Opportunities like that shake out all the time. Or nothing will shake out of the immediate conversation. And then a week or two later, someone will go, hey, Jordan, you're still top of mind. And I just walked out of a sales meeting and we're looking for a keynote speaker for our annual event. Do you do speaking by any chance? And the reason I'm top of mind is because I friggin' texted the guy 14 days ago and he was like, I know this random person who might be good for this. So you're doing this. It takes like 5 minutes a day, 6 minutes a day.
Yeah.
And you do this with 4 people a day, 5 days a week, take weekends off for all I care. That's 20 people a week. And now you've got 80 people a month that you've been talking to, re-engaging, that you haven't talked to or heard from in years.
Right.
You're going to run out of people real fast. And then you start to maintain those connections better. And suddenly you have hundreds and hundreds of people in your network, in your orbit, whatever. And they're thinking about you and you're thinking of ways that you can help them. And it's so scalable. It doesn't take up all the time.
6 minute apps for your,
That's
your
right.
career.
That's right.
I heard that, sorry to get off on you. I heard that when you got interviewed with Tom Bilyeu. And that like really blew my mind for 2 reasons. One is that exchange is so, it's you're giving value. You're just letting people know that they're on your mind. And I think that's really important because in a day-to-day, you don't wake up and start thinking about someone. You're always thinking about yourself.
Sure.
So I love that. And then the portion of that interview, you talked about the dentist.
Oh, yeah.
When your toothache was going on and someone reached out to you and said, hey, my aunt's a dentist, and how that turned into an awesome opportunity for that guy who it was just something simple. But that's something I've learned from you that I think everyone should do.
Yeah, so that story, the short version of that story is when I moved to LA, it was before Uber, and I had a toothache and I didn't have any dental insurance because entrepreneurs typically don't have any insurance. By the way, you should get health insurance. Dental's a rip usually, but get health insurance, at least some kind of emergency blanket here. This is America. You're going to die if you don't have it. You could die. So I was like, I need to get this toothache taken care of. So I called dentists and they were like, oh, what insurance do you have? Where do you live? Oh, we don't take new patients. Oh, go to the ER. And I'm like, this is all going to lead to me just having to pull this tooth out myself. Like, this is not going to look good. And then I posted on Facebook in just desperation. And some guy that I, to this day, have never met in my entire life was like, my aunt's a dentist and lives near you, or her office is near you. Do you want me to call her? I was like, please, I'm dying. Like, toothaches are no joke. They hurt. They don't go away very quickly. They can keep you up at night. I mean, it's just like a life-changing distraction in a negative way. So I went in, I got my tooth taken care of, and I was like, man, if I can ever do anything for you, let me know. And he's like, well, I want to become a graphic designer. And I was like, crap, what am I going to do? This is just something people say. Like, what can I really do for you? I don't have any need to hire you. And then I thought, but I really want to help this guy. I don't have any need to hire him. Maybe I can find someone else who does. And I kind of forgot about it for a while. And then I got a note from a friend of mine. It's like, hey, my web designer keeps flaking. Do you know anyone? I was like, I've never worked with this guy, but here's his portfolio. And then she's like, great, yeah, cool. I was like, look, I know he's hungry. That's it. He's a barista right now. So he's going to dedicate time to this and like really do it because he wants to break in. And she goes, great, just intro me. So he works with her full time. It started to work with her full time and made like 80 grand a year doing all of her clients' designs. So he quit working at, whatever local cafe. And the reason the story is significant is because he didn't have to help me, but he did. And he wasn't thinking, all right, new plan. I'm going to help this Jordan guy. And then I'm going to be like, give me a job. And then he's going to give me a job. He could have asked every single person that he'd ever met in his entire life for that job, wouldn't have got it. Yeah. Because he didn't know them. And I could have asked everybody I've met from preschool up through college to find a dentist near me, and I wouldn't have found this dentist to take care of me. So the concept that this illustrates is that most opportunities are actually over the horizon, which means you can't see them. So all these people who are like, all right, if I help this Barney guy, then I can be like, all right, let me get some free shoes. Like that's quid pro quo. It's transactional.
Happens all the time, by the way.
Oh, I bet it does actually. Like, hey man, nice glasses.
And the offers aren't that great.
Where are those shoes at?
Exactly.
Yeah, like, hey, I raked the leaves in your house. I don't have a lawn. Anyway, let me get those Gary Vee
shoes. Yeah.
So those opportunities like that are quid pro quo, and they leave people feeling a little bit dirty. Sometimes they're great. Like, hey, if you do this for me, then I'll do that for you. And you're like, great, I would love to do that for you. But generally, it's a little transactional. And then after that, if you need a favor, they're like, okay, well, what are you going to do for me? That's not a good setup to have. Because if you don't have something to offer someone, you just can't get any help from anybody? That's not a good way to be. So this guy helped me without expecting anything in return. And since I wanted to help him back, because reciprocity is kind of a human function, I was able to get him a job, but I didn't do that deliberately. It just happened. Yeah. And so you want to help other people without the attachment to getting anything in return. Because if we're all at a cocktail party, like the cliche networking mixer, and I go, you probably can't help me because I'm looking for people who paint murals. What do you do? And you're like, oh, I'm a designer. Whatever, I don't care. I need a muralist. And I'm looking around the whole room. Out of 150 people, maybe I find somebody, maybe I don't. And if I meet 75 people and I don't meet a muralist, then I'm like, screw this. This is a waste of my time. Not good. But if I described every party in LA, walking in like, what can anyone do for me? Yeah. Who's casting? Nobody. I'm out. Right. Who's casting or who has cocaine? Right. Like, I don't know if I'm allowed to say that on your show. You already did. Yes. So like, that's what people do at parties, and a lot of parties in LA, the ones you go to apparently. So, but if I'm going, how can I add value or help people that I meet? I might meet you and you go, yeah, man, I'm a social media manager at K-Swiss or whatever it is. And people go, oh, okay, that's cool. What kind of stuff are you looking to do? Well, actually, I'm trying to bring the K-Swiss brand around to influencers that are stylish and have a footprint. I'm like, oh, I know a bunch of people that are like that. Why don't I introduce you to them? I'm not thinking what's in it for me. I'm just trying to plug value that I already have in my network into you, because I know that if I do that, those people that I already know are going to be like, thanks for that intro to Omar, Jordan. That was awesome. And Omar's going to be like, wow, that was really great. And if you build up enough sort of like, oh, I owe you one, buddy, like informally, whether you get something or not, let's say I do that 1,000 times. And let's say that 99 out of 100 never do anything for me. Fine. I still have a bunch of people that might drop a life-changing opportunity in my lap. Powerful. And it's just a numbers game, and it costs me nothing. You're already there. interacting with those people.
Yeah.
You're just spending the extra 2 minutes to go, who can help this person that I already know? Oh, okay, this person and this person. And then you send an email.
Yeah.
It's like minutes
Just
per day.
turning the focus from you out, inward to outward.
Yeah.
I think, a lot of people are in sort of
Exactly.
operate in survival mode, and I found myself doing that a lot, which is like, how do I keep this train rolling, and how do I pay my bills, and where am I going next? And
Yeah.
it's all kind of me, and you get sort of sunk into this inwardly facing survival mode versus like, hey, how can I, use my talents to help other people thrive? And that's the turning point you're describing.
It's crucial because here's a real life example too. Oh, I can't help people. I need a job myself. I'm unemployed. I live on my mom's couch. Cool. What would happen if every job you applied for but didn't get, you referred somebody that was a better candidate than you? Well, you're going to end up getting other people that job, right?
Yeah.
It seems counterintuitive that you would want to do that because you're trying to get that job. But what if you just keep serving those people? Well, now everybody who you got that job for, they owe you big time. You just got them a job. And that company's like, that guy wasn't a good candidate for here, but that was awesome that he referred you. So now they view you positively and that other person owes you one. How long do you think it's going to be before somebody refers you for a job?
Mm-hmm.
You do that a few times. They might even change their mind by being like, look, that was really cool that you referred that other candidate. Have you ever done sales? Well, no, not really. Well, look, we're hiring for sales. You didn't apply for a sales job, but this is what salespeople do. And that's the kind of person we want working here. Or that was such a good person thing to do that we like you for our culture. We've got stuff that you can maybe do. And you hear about this. You hear about people getting hired at entry-level positions that have never done that job because they're like, you know what? He's just such a good fit for what we do here and the kind of person that we want to have around.
Yeah, absolutely.
And additionally, even if you continue this sort of outward focus and helping other people in your network and connecting them, it's scalable. Like if you're thinking, how can I help people? And you're like, oh, I'm a graphic designer, right? Hey, do you need graphic design? No. Oh, do you need graphic design? Yes. Oh, do you need graphic design? Yes. Now I'm like, great. Well, first of all, I can't even help 1 out of 3. And then the other 2/3, they just want to use like 8 hours of my time to create new design. I can't do that. It's not scalable. But if I'm going, you need this, and you need this, and there are other people that I know that provide that, maybe provide that. Now I've spent 2 minutes per email to connect all 3 of you. I'm done. I've generated social capital. I've generated that goodwill with these other people and with you. I could do that 100 times. By the time you run out of time to do that, you're hiring an assistant because you're so successful and they're doing the intros for you. Wow. There's no sort of point in time where you're going, man, I'm spending 100 minutes a day crafting email intros and introducing 50 people a day. Like if you're doing that, you are doing something right to the point where you probably are killing it.
Now, talking of giving to people, and you recently did a professional development course inside a maximum security prison.
Yeah.
So talk about giving and being selfless. I mean, talk to me about that. How did that come about?
So my friend Kat Hope runs something called Hustle 2.0, and what this is there are inmates that have done all kinds of things that you would not believe, or you would believe, depends. Kind of crowd you hang out with here in LA, you never know. And
those cocaine parties.
That's right. That you love so much. No, but these guys, these inmates are actually really impressive. And I thought, okay, I'm going to go here. We'll see what shakes out. And her program teaches them things like job interview skills. They also do entrepreneurial stuff. So some of the guys have business ideas, and we would vet their ideas. We hear their sort of interview spiel where we'll go, tell me about yourself. And they'll be like, well, and we'll go, look, you change this around, change that around.
Don't mention that part. But don't mention the reason you're in here.
But it's like, actually, you should, because if I go, well, tell me about yourself, and you go, well, I'm just starting off. I'm like, well, what did you do for the last few years? Oh, well, I was incarcerated. Don't avoid it, because then I'm like, what's going on here? So I was actually like, no, wear it almost on your sleeve. So when someone says, well, wait, what did you do before this? Say, oh, I was incarcerated up to now. I made some serious mistakes when I was younger. And I'm grateful that I'm able to make a turn in my life. And I had a long time to think about it in prison where I was. So this is a great opportunity for me. But if you go, well, I made a series of unfortunate events occur to me when I was a teenager, and I'm just now starting to rebuild. I'm like, this person is not talking. I'm worried. What is it? If you say I was gangbanging when I was 16 and now I'm 31, I get it. You're not 16 anymore. You were in prison for a while. I get it. That says I want a second chance more than somebody who's hiding the ball. And so we kind of went over that, a lot of that. And a lot of the guys had business ideas while they were in there. And some of these you wouldn't believe, they're really good. One guy goes, all right, this might be a dumb idea, but in my neighborhood, there's a lot of junk. And some of it's on the street, some of it's in yards, some of it's in attics. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a truck and I'm going to have a cell phone and everybody will know the number. And then people will call me and I'll go pick up the junk for a really nominal fee if it's inside the house or for free if it's outside the house. And then I'll sell it for scrap or recycle it or take it to the dump. And I was like, not only is that a good idea, my friend runs 1-800-GOT-JUNK and it's about a $400 million company. So not only is that a good idea, it is a multinational, super successful company. And he was like, oh, great. And he's like, oh, someone's already doing that. And I was, don't worry, it's a franchise. You can still do it. You can buy a franchise when you get out and you can do it because they're just looking for hardworking people who are willing to hustle. And you can make a ton of money clearly in hauling junk because he is killing it with 1-800-GOT-JUNK.
Amazing. So, you are putting a lot of content out there in helping people and guiding people. And presumably you're getting a lot of noise back at you, questions. And so tell us a bit about where people are at these days. I mean, there's a lot of hunger for people to do well. And presumably you're getting a lot of the questions of advice. Like, what are the common themes out there of what people are struggling with?
Oh, man, my inbox is full of a lot of stuff. Common themes, though, I mean, if you listen to Feedback Friday on the Jordan Harbinger show, there's stuff like, so my parents turned out to be cousins, and you're like, what? Or like, oh, I found out that my wife's been cheating on me, or you find out like
you'll take it all.
I got everything in there, and it's really interesting.
But I mean, in terms of entrepreneurship,
of course, I figured that's what you meant.
That's a good Feedback Friday for the listeners. Like, it's one of my favorite ones because you get people that you can relate with personal situations that maybe you're struggling with. You're like, oh,
yeah,
exactly. Other humans out there that struggle like I do.
Exactly.
Not my parents. That'd be weird. But like the cheating and all that stuff. Like we've all experienced a weird relationship, but the way that you've been able to answer, that question, for example, I thought it was amazing. And then you give your lawyer advice and whatnot.
Oh yeah.
But Feedback Friday.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed that. Those are actually our most popular episodes, which is good. It's surprising because you think people come to hear like me interview Reid Hoffman and they're like, oh, but this advice thing. Yeah. You got the guy whose neighbor stole his dog. That was amazing.
I was surprised by how random the questions are. And you'll just go with them all. You won't pick the one that's most relevant to business. You're like,
it's everything. It's everything. Because people can't really get good advice in a lot of places. You ask your family and they're like, oh, just suck it up. And you're like, that's not really good advice. Or very few people have experience with a lot of different things. And so, and I have a good network. So it's not all just mine. I'll ask somebody who's like, hey, when you found out your parents were cousins, what did you do? Or whatever. So, but for business trends and stuff, right now it's should I leave my job and go all in? Because a lot of people will say things like, you got to go all in, burn the ships, don't keep your day job, go all in on your side hustle. I do not think that's good advice. I think that is horrible advice. Sorry to anybody that might be putting that stuff out there. I will not mention any names because it's a very common refrain to do that. And I understand where that advice comes from, but it's actually really bad advice because what it does is it paints you into a corner. And some people are not 21 and they don't have the ability to fail without failing somebody else. They would end up failing their parents that they have to take care of, their kids, their significant other. And then some of that advice is like, oh, tell those people to go fly a kite. And it's like, no, don't ruin your relationships because you want to be an entrepreneur. I think a lot of people don't even, we were talking about this pre-show, a lot of people don't want to be entrepreneurs. They just don't want a boss telling them what to do. And it's like, that's an extension of your immaturity as a young person or a young man most of the time. It's not, I find that female entrepreneurs are often not just like, oh, I don't want a boss. They're like, oh, I have this good idea. A lot of guys who write to me are like, I'm sick of this boss telling me what to do. It's like, whoa, this is a rebellious young dude thing. It's a terrible idea to then go all in. Like, why are you quitting this job where you're learning a ton of stuff so that you can go all in, so that you get approval online when you post stuff on Instagram? Screw that. You should be going all in when you cannot scale anymore other than because your time is the limiting factor. So a really successful person, what they'll do is they'll be working their day job, learning what they can, taking that money and investing it into their business, and then they outsource everything that they can and hire for everything that they can and manage those people while keeping their day job. And then eventually they go, all right, I am hitting the wall where I don't have time to do the things necessary to scale this business, and I can't outsource anything else. So I'm going to resign from my day job and then go all in. You don't go all in and then go, geez, okay, now I got 8 extra hours a day. Guess I'll go on social and tag people on Instagram posts. That's something you can hire someone in the Philippines to do for $2 an hour. Why are you quitting your salaried position so that you can do something that could be outsourced to somebody else for pennies? It's ridiculous. And people do that all the time because it looks good. It feels cool to be like all in. You get to say you don't have a day job and this is what you're doing full time. Who cares what you're doing full time if you're making $12,000 a year doing it?
Right.
Well, which is why, sorry to interrupt you again. This is why I asked you earlier when you started doing the podcast, because you were working and you were going to college. And I think that's something that I always encourage. I did it and I still do it, but I like to learn when I'm not here, because just trying and focusing on even my job, that teaches me 20 other things that I didn't realize that I'm good at. And, you know, from lawyer to Jordan Harbinger.
Exactly. And here's the thing. Look, I know people are like, oh, this sounds like responsible advice. I don't like that. Look at it this way. When you have a job, you are making all kinds of mistakes and somebody else is paying you to make them and paying for your mistakes. That's look at every time he screws up, that comes out of your pocket.
Yeah,
basically.
no, it's me that's screwing up. I mean, it's a really good point. I mean, I've made mistakes along the way here in companies that could sink a smaller business.
Sure.
You know, that we've been able to endure and tack and go to plan B, and there's funding underneath it. But yeah, you're absolutely right. And I think there's obviously a big culture now around entrepreneurship, and there's a lot of success stories that we can see every day, whether it's, you know, people you're interviewing, whether it's people I'm interviewing, Instagram, you know, so there's I don't know if we're just creating a lot more anxiety of people to live up to something, or are we creating a more driven community out there? I'm not sure if it's good or bad.
It's both. And I'll tell you, I see both sides of this. There are a lot of people that are going, oh, okay, the reason I never felt really comfortable in my position as a marketing manager is because actually I like helping diverse groups of clients do very specific things in marketing, not helping one client do all this stuff in marketing. So they want to start their own agency, be their own boss, be an entrepreneur in that way. That totally makes sense. But then there's another group of people that go, oh, so basically now if I have a job, I'm some kind of chump, and what I need to do is have 100,000 Instagram followers. Otherwise, I'm some kind of loser, and I have to be able to say that I work for myself and that I'm my own brand. It's like, no, that's not really. So it's kind of that sort of double-edged sword, right? I'm glad people are thinking about outside the box ideas and what they can do to enjoy life better, start businesses that they really love doing. But I'm also disappointed when I hear someone go, yeah, so I work in a really stable field and I really enjoy my job, but I'm thinking of quitting because everybody I know quits their job and is becoming an entrepreneur and is posting about how awesome it is. And I was like, those mofos are broke AF.
Yeah.
They are going to be miserable. One or two will succeed and you'll be like, that could have been me. Enjoy what you are doing now. You already do. You're providing for your family. You don't have to throw it all away so that you can go stand on a beach with your laptop and take photos. Like, that's not what you have to do.
Yeah.
And there's FOMO. Like, even in that, FOMO goes in every circle. Even now, I was telling my wife this morning, I was like, man, Brian Johnson from Braintree made $800 million on his exit. What am I doing with my life? And she's like, okay, I mean, this is ridiculous.
Like, you could never, right? There's always someone. You know, when I was growing up, there was only a few examples. You have Bill Gates, it's Richard Branson. Now there's 100 a day. I see people outdoing me. You know, I could be miserable if I wasn't self-confident to be like, I'm doing pretty good.
Yeah, I always tell like my friends and myself, like, just be thankful for where you're at and find the positive, everything positive around where you are and the people especially, because I don't believe that the grass is always greener on the other side. It's as green as you want to make it.
It is. And look, you can do an upward comparison and kill yourself all the time where you're like, man, this person this person that. And then you hear like the tell-all interview with that person 5 years later and they're like, for the last 10 years, I've been depressed and thought about killing myself every day. And you're like, what?
Yeah.
You know, like I interviewed Moby recently and he was like, every day I just wanted to kill myself. And I was like, wait, When was this? Oh, when you had a bunch of Billboard #1 singles, $20 million penthouse in Manhattan. Everyone loved you, and you were like having the time of your life. And he's like, yeah, that's when I most wanted to die. And I'm just like,
and I was an arsehole.
Yeah, and miserable.
That
And
surprised me too.
it was crazy. But then you also don't want to do. I think it's unsustainable, and it can be bad to do downward comparison all the time too, where you're like, well, at least I'm not starving and living in a war-torn Somalia. It's like, cool, but that doesn't really help you get better.
Right.
Like, yeah, you know who else isn't starving and dying in war-torn Somalia? The guy who sleeps outside this building in the doorway. But, like, I don't want to be that guy.
Yeah.
So you don't want to always do a downward comparison either. What you said was right on. You got to look at where you are now and sort of have, and I hate this word because it's cliche and stupid, but gratitude for where you are. Gratitude is abused. It's abused along with authenticity. But it's important in this case because you have to look and go, all right, reality check. Where am I right now? I work in a big city. I work for this cool company. I get along with the people that I work with. I'm working in the field that I like. There's something to be said for that. Like, not everybody gets to roll into K-Swiss, hang out with Barney and Nate and be like, oh, my job is to make sure that our social is in order and innovate in this area, and I got all this freedom to go live on YouTube, and you just found out that was happening.
Yeah.
He didn't have to.
He doesn't have the freedom. He just didn't tell me.
Right. But he didn't have to fill out a bunch of paperwork to make it happen either. Like, people would kill for that role, so don't screw it up.
Yeah, exactly. This is good advice. I'll write this down.
But like, you know, you also, you're not going, well, at least I don't live in Somalia, but then you're also not going, oh, but Tom Bilyeu is so much more popular than our channel. Like, that will kill you.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that if you can get, and I'm convinced of this, if you can get inside like Tim Ferriss's head, he's comparing himself to like somebody else, who's comparing themselves to somebody else, who's comparing themselves to somebody who died 100 years ago who did more.
Chaco.
Yeah, right. Like I guarantee you that if we got Richard Branson and we like gave him truth serum, he'd be like, I know Andrew Carnegie though. That guy was really impressive. I hate myself. Like, there's going to be some element of that somewhere in his psyche, and it's not helpful.
This last thing I want to talk about is, and I don't know how open you are to talk about it. I'm going to ask anyway, but you're talking of these big time executives. Is you're now helping some. You're in that world now, and they're coming to you for advice or training. So, tell me a bit more about that. Sure.
So I work now with large Silicon Valley companies, the military, and other civilian organizations. And one of the companies that I'm working with is it is a really large social network that everybody uses and owns a lot of the other social networks and apps that everybody uses. And I'm actually training a lot of their security personnel, executive protection personnel, because what a lot of special forces and military guys and gals are good at is shooting things and taking care of business when needed and getting people to point A to point B safely and being really safe. What they're not necessarily as good at is being without, let's say, authority. So if you're former Secret Service and now you're someone's bodyguard, you can't just roll into a restaurant and be like, I need everybody out of here. It's like, no, you are a civilian. I am not clearing out this restaurant for you. So you have to do it in another way. You have to have persuasion skills. You have to have soft skills. People have to know, like, and trust you. Other things that we're doing is helping them protect against social engineering attacks. So there's something called elicitation where, like, let's say you all work together in a secure facility at Amazon or something like that. And I'm talking to you at some gathering and I'm like, oh yeah, where do you work? Oh, I work at Amazon. Oh, what do you do? I'm working in warehousing. Oh, is that the one that's in the middle of downtown? No, actually, we have another warehouse outside of town. Oh, really? I thought you just had a big one downtown. Well, that's where we keep most of our inventory, but we keep all the expensive electronics and stuff at the one that's near Pasadena. I go, oh, that's cool. Then conversation over, we have a drink, I'm done. Then I meet you at another thing, and I'm targeting you guys, right? Because I'm China or something. Sorry, China. North Korea. I'm North Korean. They definitely are not listening to this. And I'm talking to you, and I'm like, oh, yeah, where do you work? At the Amazon warehouse. Oh, cool. One of my buddies, he works at that one out in Pasadena. And you're like, oh, what's his name? And I'm like, it's actually my wife's cousin's husband. I can't remember his name, but he does something with electronics. Oh, yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I work out there. I handle the facilities. And I go, yeah, he said it's really big and like really secure. And you go, well, maybe not as secure as we need it to be. And I'm like, oh, that's weird. What do you mean? And you're like, just, a lot of people in and out. It's really hard. We're a little understaffed right now. I'm like, oh, let me know if I can help you with your hiring. Conversation over. right? Then I'm like, okay, this is where they keep all the expensive stuff. I know you're short-staffed on security, or I know that, you got a lot of trucks going in and out. And then I might talk to a third guy over here, and I'm targeting him as well, and he's a supplier or something. And he goes, oh, yeah, I try to get in there before 7 a.m. because when you get to 8, 9, 10 a.m., the place is a madhouse. You can barely get in and out. People everywhere, can barely unload the truck. And I go, so if I want to walk into your expensive electronics warehouse and steal a bunch of crap, I know that you're shorthanded and I know that you're really busy at 10 or 11 a.m. That's when I'm going in. So, like, I can elicit that stuff. And that on a smaller scale or a different scale will happen with somebody who's a very important VIP. I might know that you are Gary Vaynerchuk's bodyguard or something, right? I don't think he has personal security. But
Just maybe
you should.
He does, but they're so good you never see him.
Sure.
You can never tell. But
Yeah,
he has got something.
I mean, I'm in his office when I see him, so they're probably not standing there. But he should, right? And so I might know that you're on his team, and I might be like, oh, cool, what are you guys doing standing around here? And you're like, oh, we're waiting for somebody. And I'm going, well, you can't stand around here. This is my property. And you go, look, do me a favor. We're waiting for our VIP client to come out. We'll be gone in a second. And then I'll talk to other people around you, and I'll figure out, okay, it looks like this is who they're working with. This is these three guys I always see them together. They're on a team. Who's their client? Oh, I think I just saw Kim Kardashian. All right, so these are her 3 personal protection people. You're the driver. You go inside with her, but he is the guy that actually goes from the car to the other place. So when I see you, I know she's gonna go somewhere. If I see you in the facility beforehand, I know that that's who's coming in. You can elicit things like that, and that can be very dangerous for that person's client. So if I know who Gary V's security people are, and I want to kidnap Gary V, which I don't think anybody would.
You'd give him back in the day.
Good. Yeah, exactly. That's what I was going to say. I was like, you would have
I'll
to
give you a ransom to take them back. He's driving me nuts.
This is not working. This guy won't.
He's yelling at me.
Yeah, he's yelling at me. He's trying to optimize my workflow. Get him out of here. So, you can target people that way. And that is not such a big deal when you're talking about like some schmo with one bodyguard. It is a big deal if you're talking about somebody who's like the president of Venezuela. It's a big deal when you're talking about somebody who's a billionaire.
And this is from your expertise in communications and like social dynamics, I think is what I've read you call it, social dynamics. And how did you kind of get plugged into that?
Yeah,
did somebody come talk to you?
They came and talked to us, yeah. So what was happening was I was teaching all the persuasion and influence stuff that I teach on the Jordan Harbinger show and with the guests. But then also I was telling stories about stuff I used to do when I was younger, like pranks and things like that. And I also have done social engineering stints with various friends' companies. Like the Amazon warehouse thing is a real example from a not Amazon, but a company that did things like that. And I would go and walk into a place, and if you get caught, you have like a letter from the head of security. It's like, call me if this person gets caught. I didn't have to use that letter very often. And they're wondering if somebody who's a bad actor can walk in and steal a bunch of confidential documents. And a guy that I worked with, one of the things that he did that was really impressive was, and you'll always hear people say the guy that I worked with, because you never know when you're admitting a crime, right? Essentially. But what happened was, he was tasked with going and seeing if he could, like, red team is what it's called, this particular facility that was like a regular Fortune 500 type company. Drives by, sees the security guy at the booth or gate, whatever, looks at past that guy, sees the dumpster. It says like Allied Sanitation. Goes online, orders a hat, polo, jacket, Allied Sanitation, gets their logo off the website, has it made, overnights it. Calls the head of security. Hey, this is John over at Allied Sanitation. What I want to do is come and check a dumpster. Can you put me on the security list? And they go, what's wrong with the dumpster? Well, one of the wheels is messed up. Okay, Allied Sanitation, looks behind him. Oh, I guess those are the guys that handle our dumpsters. Cool, I'll put you on the list. What's your name? Yeah, Joe Schmo. Whatever, see you tomorrow. Roll in on the security list. Guard's not just going to let you in. He wants to know who we are, so he comes with us. And I go, oh, yeah, dumpster number 3. This thing is a mess. Can I pull my truck up? Yeah, okay, whatever. And look, this might take like 45 minutes. You're welcome to stay here. If you do, maybe you can make yourself useful. And he's like, no, I gotta go back to the gate. Good. Okay, cool. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take a bunch of the stuff out of the dumpster here. Let me get some gloves. I need to lift it up and look at this wheel, and I can't. It's full. So my buddy's loading a bunch of stuff into his truck, all these papers. It's a shreddable document dumpster. His presentation to the company the next week or next month or whenever it was, here's your payroll and here's how much all of you make. And they're like, how did you get this? And he goes, oh, I went in and I took all of your shreddable documents and I put them in the back of my truck and then I left. What happened? We got to fire the security guy. No, he did his job. His job is to make sure that you're on the list and that only authorized vendors are on the list. And I was, as far as he knew, an authorized vendor. And he put me on the list and I came and I loaded the documents in and then I loaded. I drove off and said, I'll be right back with a replacement wheel. And then I made this PowerPoint presentation.
Incredible.
Yeah,
Wow.
It's really not that hard because you're looking at people's assumptions.
Yeah.
Like I didn't really have to do much to walk in here, right? I did put my name and then have the guy call you. But if I had just walked in here in a FedEx jacket, like the guy who walked in right in front of me, I guarantee you I could have walked in and gone, do you guys mind if I use the restroom? And they go, yeah, it's back there. And then I'm back by your computers and stuff like that, looking for the bathroom in my FedEx jacket. If the FedEx guy walked back here, you wouldn't go, what are you doing here?
Yeah.
You'd be like, oh, hey, man, he must be dropping off a box.
We'll let anybody in here, won't we? We
That's why I got in here. I just showed up, started working.
Yeah,
Who's this
you're not
guy?
even on the payroll, dude.
He just loves it.
Yeah,
It took me 2 weeks to get out of here.
shoes.
So you traveled a ton. That's the other interesting thing about you is you've been to all sorts of places, and you even got yourself into trouble. In fact, you got kidnapped more than once.
Yeah.
And
Nice.
how much of this skill set you had, did that all go to shit the moment you were kidnapped, or
No.
did you actually use these?
I did use, so the first time I did it was, I was 20, I didn't have these skills. Like I got nabbed by a fake taxi driver in Mexico. That was handled the old fashioned way that you can do when you're 20, which is getting in a fight with a taxi driver. So that when someone's 50 and they sit in a cab all day and you're 20 and all you do is lift weights because you think that's what's going to make you attractive to women, like you have a distinct advantage.
Was the idea for ransom? Was that the?
I don't know. What happened was we got to the place where he was going to take me, and either ransom or retrospect. I think it was one of those like, let's take him to every ATM in town until his card stopped working, or chopped up into little pieces and sacrificed. I don't know. So didn't find out, thankfully. But the second time it happened was 5 years later, and that was when these skills really came into play because it was like, all right, remain calm, talk about logical topics so that they're.
Where were you?
Serbia. So former
Traveling,
Yugoslavia. Yeah, working. I was working there, and they were like, "Oh, he's a spy," and it's like, not every foreigner in this country is a spy, but in their experience, that's not so inaccurate. And I was there for a while. I was there for a long time. You know, I was like, I was kind of like not registered properly because they have a really pain in the butt registration process where they keep an eye on foreigners, and I was like sick of it. Last time I tried to register, they threw me in jail overnight with a bunch of prostitutes who were chain smoking, and I was like, screw this. I'm not doing this. I'm not playing by the rules anymore. If the rules are what's going to get me in trouble.
Another downtown LA party.
Yeah, it's like one of Barney's parties here.
So were you just grabbed off the street? I mean, what was the?
I was at a concert and they were like, "Oh, here's one of these American spies." They were just like harassing people as like their secret police, not so secret police, I guess. And then they were super high on probably like meth or something. I mean, these are not like functional security officers. These are not their finest. These are like the militia guys from Bosnia that now live in like somewhere in Serbia. Serbia, I will say Serbia is an awesome place. I love it. I have a lot of friends there. I was there for a long time. This is like one bad experience. It's like the person who comes to America and gets mugged.
Yeah.
If they're here for a year, they're like, it happens.
Yeah.
If you're here for 2 days and you get mugged, you're like, screw this place. It sucks.
Yeah.
I'm more like, Serbia's great. And when I told my Serbian friends, they were like, yeah, that happens to a lot of people. Us included. It's not just like they don't like foreigners. It's like the police, there's something going on in a lot of countries, especially authoritarian regimes, where the police are militarized and they can kind of do whatever they want with impunity. And like, it was a little bit of a sneak preview of what could happen in a place like this if we allow law enforcement to constantly go unchecked in certain places. Like, look, cops are usually really great people, but I'm from Detroit, where they essentially, in large part for a long time, operated like a gang. And you see that happening in other countries too. And so these guys took me and my friend, and they were like really angry, really aggressive. And my friend didn't know how to handle it. But I was like talking really logically, making them think hard about topics. And when you do things like that, like if someone's really angry and you can confuse them in a way that's not aggressive while remaining calm, you can really drag their energy through the mud. And I interviewed this magician, Darren Brown. You probably know who that is.
Yeah.
So I had Darren Brown on my show. He's like a household name in the UK. Such a cool guy. And he was getting mugged, I think, in Spain or something like that, or somewhere. He was getting mugged, and the guy was really aggressive. And he goes, "The walls around my house are not 10 foot high." And the guy was like, "What? The walls around my house are not 10 foot high." And this sounds really cryptic and mysterious, but what he's doing is he's taking somebody who's really jacked up and making engaging their logical brain in a way that makes them go, "The walls around my house, your house, they're not 10 foot high." Like, you're doing that in your head in some way, which it's very hard to be like aggressive unless you're really like methed out of your mind or coked out of your mind. It's hard to both be aggressive and do any sort of calculation in your head. But if I'm like, "What's 2 + 7?" You're not going to do that. But if I tell you something in a very confident but not aggressive tone, your brain just goes, "Wait, I got to process this." And you keep doing it over and over. And eventually the energy just kind of goes into the ground. The plane lands a little bit. So with these guys in Serbia, they're like, "What are you doing in our country? We know you're a spy." And I'm like, "Look, man, I teach refugees English." "That's BS. You don't do that." I'm like, "Look, I'm going to eat at the best restaurant in town. It's called this." And they're like, that's not the best restaurant in town, you know? And I'm like, "Well, yeah, I read that."
Have you tried the veal?
Yeah, have you tried the veal? Yeah, that kind of thing. And I'm like, "Well, what about this other place?" And they're like, "No." And also, "Wait a minute. No, you're a spy." And I'm like, "No, I teach kids English at this place, at this store. It's at 38 whatever street." And they're like, "Well, why aren't you there?" "Well, I'm going to the best restaurant in the town. It's this." "Look, man, that's not." And you just see the wheels, they're starting to trip over their own stuff because they don't believe what they're saying. They're just being aggressive for the sake of like screwing with us. And I was like, "Okay, I'm just going to have you land this plane." And then we're like, "Do you want to get your ass kicked? We're going to beat your ass." I was like, "I don't want you to do that. Can we avoid that? I would like to avoid that. We should do something where that does not happen." And they're just like, "Oh, you're supposed to be really scared." Because when you get a predictable reaction, it feeds into energy. So if someone's trying to scare you and you get scared, it feeds their energy because that's the predicted reaction. So you're sort of following step by step in that cycle. But if you give them a complete non sequitur in a way that's not like an aggressive affront, like if they're being aggressive and you go, "What?" That's also part of the programming. But if they're aggressive and you go, "I don't really think I do want you to beat my ass. I'd rather do something else, like go out for a burger." And they're just like, "No,
That's not what you're
that's
supposed
not
to do.
part of the program." The program was get more aggressive or get less aggressive or go on the attack. Now I'm like, what do I do with this reaction? They have to parse that. And you just do that enough that will actually get tired. Now, granted, they can also just start punching you in the face. That's totally possible. You have to be prepared for that. But if they aren't sure what they're going to do, you can confuse them and you can start to take control of what's called like the frame of the interaction. So like I just start out framing things and they're just like, "Wait, I don't get what's going on here." So I'll say, "Hey, later on, we should all go get something to drink." And they're like, "Later on? Oh, you'll be dead later on." And I'm like, "But we should definitely go get something to drink." And they're just like, "What? What are you talking about?" Like, it's such a non sequitur. And they were also, these aren't sober guys, so this is easy.
Yeah.
Don't try this with like your local PD if you get caught shoplifting.
Yeah,
Like, it's not going to work. It works with people who are not necessarily thinking coherently. And these guys, I could tell, were just like, they were out to just cause trouble. They were screwing around with us. They were not sober. So this is like a really good way to get around that. And I used to do like doorman style security at clubs in Detroit. I was really small. So I wasn't about to be like, "Oh yeah, 6'5", big ass dude, I'll show you what's up." I'd have to be like, "Oh, you know what? I really don't want to get into a confrontation with you right now, sir. That would be bad. Look, all I want to do is search you for weapons. That's my job here. You ain't touching me." And I'd go, "Oh, well, I understand that. I understand that you're upset. Look, I'm having a little trouble hearing you. Let's go outside and talk." And I would bring them, out from the lobby and outside the venue. And I'd be like, "Yep, don't let this guy back in." And the other guys at the door are like, and meanwhile, he's like, "Well, I thought we were going to talk." And I'm like, "No, I'm just confusing you because this is all the best weapon I have." And that would happen all the time. Other times that I've used this stuff where like when I was working at a club and I was like 18, 19, and I didn't really know what I was doing, but my boss was like, "Make friends with all the gang leaders." And I was like, "That seems like a bad idea." He's like, "No, it's a good idea, because what happens is if he says you're cool and then those guys over there who are loose cannons start screwing with you, then they're going to go, 'Oh no, look, Adrian said he's cool.' And it's like, done. But if you try to get into it with them and then you go and whine to this guy, he's not going to want to hear it. Those guys will eat you for lunch." So you have to play these like politics. It's like what I imagine prison is like.
Yeah.
You go in there and you are dog meat. But if you are, let's say, an attorney and you help someone, then it's hands. Don't touch that guy. He's cool. Then nobody will mess with you. And you see that play out in politics, especially in like very primal circumstances like a prison, but it happens anywhere. So the second time, yes, round 2, kidnapping Jordan round 2 was mostly about me calming these guys down, generating an opportunity to escape and taking it.
So then where do you think this is going to go from here for you? Because you've obviously got so many things to offer, fascinating background, and this idea of a networking course is you could do 10 of them, negotiation and all these things you're talking about. And you obviously are doing it professionally for some seriously important people. Where do you think this goes? Do you have a roadmap, or you just playing it as it comes?
Yeah. So recently, I was just thinking about this quite recently. I want to continue to grow the Jordan Harbinger show. I love doing the interviews. I love profiling people. Got some really cool guests coming up that I'm really excited about, and I enjoy that. But yeah, I also really enjoy going and teaching like the military or the Secret Service or whatever, or these private companies, some of these skills, because I realize, they don't really know this, and it's really helpful.
Yeah.
And it's fun for me to go teach, and I get a cool inside look at it. But I really do have a passion mostly for the conversation. Like I really do enjoy the interviewing and the profiling and the advice giving. And so I'm sticking with that for now. But I'm open to ideas, like I used to have training every week and run programs every week and create products all the time. And I just realized like I really don't want to be like internet marketer number 7,576. Like there's too many. This course closes at midnight, guys, right now. And a lot of it is scammy BS that's designed to take your money and not take your business anywhere, really.
Yeah.
So there's just too much of that. And I'm like, I'm done with that space. Just like I'm done with the dating space. When I started, shortly after I started the show, the whole like pickup artist thing started to take off. And I was like, let's do that, but not be douchebags. Like, let's do that without lying to women. Let's do that while working on yourself. And that was cool for a while. Now this whole like Me Too stuff rolls around, and it's like, you can't be like, no, I'm the good drug dealer. It's like, you're still a freaking drug dealer. So you can't really get around it. And I was like, everything I've had to teach on that subject is out there somewhere. And the guys that need that can either get it or they've outgrown it. And so like now, look, I'm married, I'm having a kid. I'm not trying to be like, here's how you go to the bar and troll. It's just like, I'm over that. I'm pushing 40. It's a little sad. So again, to your point earlier about evolving and evolution, my evolution is, all right, there are amazing people out there that I'm interviewing all the time. I want to get their stories because a lot of interviewers are just not really doing it. They're not getting those stories out there in a way that's applicable for the audience. And that's something that I think is important. There's a lot of entrepreneur podcasts or whatever, but there are not that many where they're going to get somebody and really deconstruct their personal life or like a performer or something like that in a way that's really good. So I'm focusing on that for now. But yeah, I do like the quote unquote side hustle of like teaching black ops people how to be more black ops.
Wow, that's quite the side hustle.
Yeah.
Just teaching the black ops some stuff, no big deal.
Fascinating. Well, listen, we let's wrap this up, and I mean we could talk forever, and I hope I've covered a lot of things. There's a lot of things in my notes we didn't get to because there's a lot to you. And I would encourage everybody to jump on the Jordan Harbinger podcast. It's fascinating and it's amazing subjects. Really, it's been an honor to have you here. I hope we did our end of it. And for everybody out there, this has been CEOs Wear Sneakers. Myself, producer Omar Presswich, and Jordan. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
That's
all right.
that. You want to hit that?
Yeah. I think I have to stop.
Oh. Yeah,
That's great.
The amazing tracks. I was like, how do you